Returning now to our flood coverage of the situation in New South Wales. As we've been reporting today, tens of thousands of people have been told to flee their homes in Sydney as more areas are being told to evacuate. While rain is expected to ease across the city, fresh warnings have been issued for the mid-north coast and also the northern tablelands. Joining us live now is the New South Wales SES Chief Superintendent Ashley Sullivan. Really appreciate your time, thank you. As the system does move north, which regions are you most concerned with right now?
Yeah, our focus is certainly shifted out of Sydney, not to say we're not focusing on that, but certainly into the Central Coast, up into that Hunter region and the mid-north coast. We are seeing rivers rise dramatically in those areas. Our workload has increased and our crews and emergency partners are responding to multiple rescues, storm jobs and flood jobs as we speak. We still have 105 evacuation orders current and 57 evacuation warnings current. So still definitely an evolving situation. Our focus in around Sydney and the Georges River and Woronora River is particularly around when those communities can return, noting that the levels have started to ease on the Georges and Woronora. The Hawkesbury-Nepean River system is still got a lot of water through that system and flood levels are still quite high. So it's going to be days and into the weekend and possibly next week before we start to see river levels drop to a safe level in those areas. Today we're deploying additional resources, particularly up into the Central Coast and Hunter, and we saw some interstate colleagues arrive early this morning to support all the volunteers and our other emergency services that have been busy with this rain event since it started on Friday. We do urge residents, particularly in the Hunter region, to be very cautious in the coming days. We are seeing that heavy rain persist and those river levels continue to rise. Keep up to date with the latest information on the SES website. Contact the SES on 132 500 or 000 in life-threatening emergencies.
You mentioned those new evacuation orders that were issued overnight. Are the bulk of impacted residents actually heeding those warnings? Are they heading to the evacuation centres or to friends and family? Are they doing what you want them to do at this point?
Yeah, we certainly appreciate all the community members that do heed our advice and leave early. We have 12 evacuation centres open between Sydney, the Hunter and heading up into that mid-north coast area, and we have seen a large influx to those evacuation centres. Some residents have opted to remain in their home, and unfortunately there's some of those flood rescues where they need medical attention or they need to urgently get out, and our rescuers are trying to get to some of those residents at the moment. So our best advice is to follow the evacuation order, in a warning if it's safe to do so. Head out to friends, family or our evacuation centres and keep yourself, your friends and your family and your pets safe.
And so when we're talking about the flood rescues, what sort of numbers are we talking here in terms of how many your crews have had to carry out, how many calls for help you've been getting?
Yeah, most definitely. So for the event since it started, nearly 6,600 calls for assistance. About 350 of those are flood rescues. 50 flood rescues in the last 18 hours alone. So our workload is still really high. It's very sustained. Our crews are doing a tremendous job out in the field, keeping up with that workload. We're very well supported by all our colleagues in other emergency services. The ADF troops are out on the ground. There's more being brought online as we speak, particularly up in that Hunter area. We have their aviation capability from the ADF at night time, and we have numerous helicopters out when they're able to fly, where the weather has eased, out performing recon, rescue tasks and resupply. And as I mentioned, our interstate colleagues who are arriving from all over Australia today.
Chief Superintendent, I know last time we saw significant flooding in some of these regions, there were some issues around communication. Some residents at the time complained that they had received very late warnings about what was coming. Have those issues been resolved this time around? Have you been able to communicate effectively with people needing help in the worst affected areas? Do you feel like lessons have been learnt from the last round of flooding?
Yeah, so we've tried to communicate early and very frequently in this event, and we do acknowledge that for certain areas, this flood has been different to floods previous. So rivers have risen quicker than before, creeks have risen much quicker than what the community would expect, and it has caught some people out. That's understood. Majority of residents have adhered to our advice, and it's unfortunately those 350 flood rescues don't really show the level of support that we are getting from the community in evacuating. We do understand that there are power outages in various parts of New South Wales, and that may attribute to some lack of communication. We do understand that there are some mobile phone towers that are also experiencing some difficulty. So wherever possible, our messages are being communicated regularly, frequently, and through many means as possible. But wherever possible, like I said, the New South Wales SES website is up to date. Please head to there for the latest information.
Just finally, how does the scale of these floods compare with those other recent floods I was alluding to? How have they differed? We've heard a lot of people saying that this time around the floodwaters just rose so rapidly.
Yeah, most definitely. This was a severe weather event. We saw some phenomenal rain totals, particularly around the Illawarra and Sydney, that has caused that significant flooding. In some areas, we haven't seen flooding like this for 40 years. So some community members, would never have seen or experienced a flood like this. And as the ground is so wet, we have seen the floods react differently. No two floods are the same. But this flood happened much quicker than I guess people would be used to, and that would have expected to, cause flooding in areas because of that saturation level. It's so wet. We haven't been able to dry out, in large parts of New South Wales, and not only the flooding in Sydney along the east coast, but we've had flooding right out through Bathurst, Dubbo, Wellington. And parts of our far west have been in flood for months and months, and will be for months to come. So it's really majority of New South Wales at the moment is impacted by either severe weather and flooding, or both.
New South Wales SES Chief Superintendent Ashley Sullivan, we appreciate you joining us and wish your crews out on the ground all the best as they work to help so many impacted residents. Thank you.